with a song in my heart, I behold your adorable face.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, today I am going to plunge in with mentioning a charity that I have mentioned before, and I'm going to mention it today, and I'm going to post something about it at the end of this video, and I'm going to do it at the end of every video for the next week or two, because it's such a wonderful charity. It's called KidsOut, the Fun and Happiness Charity. It's reaching for the stars, and it is, I'll just briefly tell you what it is about. It's about some of the UK's most vulnerable and disadvantaged children. Most will have fled domestic abuse, including emotional, violent, and certain sexual, with an S in front of it since this is YouTube, abuse, to live in safe houses and refuges. The charity currently supports in excess of 13,000 children in refuge in London. When the children and their mothers flee abuse, they usually arrive at refuges traumatized with no belongings whatsoever. KidsOut makes sure every child receives a box of new toys on arrival, plus they take them and their mothers out on fun trips. Their aim to provide the children with new happy memories, and more importantly, to feel valued and cared for. So at the end of this, I'm going to post how, to those of you who are interested, you can support this wonderful cause. Okay? Now, to plunge in with what Josh says. I'm sure you've already been told this, but apparently Meghan and Harry are putting out subtle feelers towards Prince George through the media, saying they will be there for him if he ever needs them or ever wants to meet his other family. May I stop right there and say, the farcicality is beyond belief. The child doesn't even know Meghan properly. So, let me continue. But Meghan isn't the one behind this sly, manipulative, and downright wicked PR exercise. It's Harry. Might be both, darling, might be both. Harry wants to help, in quotation marks, Prince George in any way he can. And Harry has even alluded to Prince George as his biggest competition. Attempting to get inside the head of a child to make him just as messed up as Harry is just plain evil. Well, of course, that's your opinion, and that would certainly be the effect, although it may not be the aim. The aim may be that Harry is going to unscramble George's straight thinking and to twist it up and liberate him in the process, the way Meghan has liberated Harry and his thought processes. Now, where was I? Harry has stated publicly that he wants to help all of William's and Catherine's children to ensure they are properly looked after and turn out as they should. And I've got to stop there as well. You know, remember, Harry went to see the Queen to make sure that she was being properly taken care of, because he couldn't trust her private secretary. He couldn't trust Angela Kelly. The implication was that he couldn't trust Lady Susan Hussey, although, of course, after he and Meghan got her thrown to the wolves in the resourceful way that their cabal managed to succeed in doing. Remember? Gozy Fulani, otherwise known as Marlene Headley, and Missing Harriman. Anyway. So, he wants to help all of William's and Catherine's children to ensure that they are properly looked after and turn out as they should. My goodness, isn't it wonderful? You turn out children to be corkscrews. Well, a corkscrew can release all sorts of things in a way that an arrow might not be able to, straight as an arrow and convoluted as a corkscrew. An adult who views a child as his rival and competition is a sick adult. Very well observed. It certainly is true. And of course, Harry has made it absolutely clear that he does regard Prince George as the person who would be knocking him off his perch. This shows that Harry is dangerous. Going about trying to replace a child's parents to help the child is unhinged and diabolical. Drugs rarely have blown Harry's mind, well, the little he had to begin with. Americans online have suggested William and Catherine apply for a legal restraining order to prevent Harry and also Meghan, but primarily Harry, from physically coming within a certain distance of their children. Thankfully, though, William and Catherine have royal security bodyguards who can keep Harry and other dangerous people away from their children. Well, I have to tell you, you have actually sailed very close to the wind with this comment, my dear Josh. Proximity has been a great consideration, hence why Harry and Meghan no longer occupy Frogmore Cottage. Nobody wants them to have easy access. They need to have no access whatsoever, except the most distant access in the most controlled environments. But the concerns you have raised are, I am told, concerns that have existed for some time. I mean, the drug-addled, drug-using, drug-confessed uncle is going to illuminate the children's lives with revelations. Take ayahuasca. Come and meet my mother-in-law and let her give you some weed. The time to start weed is when you're 11 and 12. And by the time you're 13 and 14, your brain has been blown. It blows your mind. Look at my mind, blown to smithereens. I used to be a stupid idiot. Now I'm a really genius idiot. Sorry, genius. Curiosity Killed the Cat says, Lady C, what do you make of the newspaper reports that Prince William and Prince Harry's former private secretary might spearhead Harry's comeback? His friends are saying that if anyone can do it, Ed Lane Fox can. One said, if anyone can do it, Edward can. Last time I saw him, I wanted to take him by the shoulders and say, Ed, please bring our boy home. Oh my God, those heartstrings. Mickey, Aurora, rush and get the Stradivarius. It's time for Megsy Baby and H to play that fiddle. Then the quote continues, it's the right time now. asked how Harry, if he would be helping Harry, Edward Lane Fox said, "It's not something I've got a view on, I'm afraid. Curiosity killed the cat. That is a very polite way of saying, not a chance in this lifetime or the next. But my bongo bongo drums have beat out the following tune. Edward Lane Fox cannot stand Meghan. That's one of the reasons why he stood down. He can't stand Meghan. He thought that Meghan treated him and everybody else appallingly. He didn't like the way Meghan was speaking to him. He didn't like the way Meghan was speaking to anybody. And he thought, life's too short for this fandango. Let's put it that way. I was going to actually use a word that I was told, and it only has 4 letters, and it shares all the letters with this. But let's stick to fandango. Kathleen MacDonald says, "Dear Lady C, please, would you check out," and mentions a certain YouTuber's videos by name, and I'm not going to mention the name, sorry, where she claims that the Markle family don't really exist, but it's a fictional family made up by the CIA, and that Meghan is actually a CIA agent whose mission was to secure Harry and destroy the royal family. She claims that the Markles and her childhood friend are all in on this. I would imagine that's Nikki Pretty. By the way, I haven't seen any of this, and I don't intend to see it. And as everybody who is familiar with me knows, I don't look at YouTube deliberately to maintain my autonomy and not have my input, or shall we say, distorted unintentionally by input, to be polite, that would be undesirable for anybody who really wishes to have a balanced, independent, and sensible and down-to-earth view of matters. Also, they're not going to be able to tell me anything that would add to any bit of my knowledge whatsoever. So they're not going to be able to tell me anything so they would be leading me down blind alleys, and I'm afraid I don't want to go down blind alleys. But anyway, let me continue with the question. She claims that the Markles and her childhood friend are all in on this, that all photos are photoshopped and fake. She even claims that you are also party to this, 2 exclamation marks. Absolutely. Oh, and look at this new piggy, flying all about the place. And while we're at this little piggy, which is very much like Biggles, let's do Mr. Pickles, which was crocheted for me by a very kind person. So, and this was also given to me. We have all these piggies flying everywhere. And they're not even going to put on their goggles because they should be shutting their eyes. And let's not forget our old stalwart, because this absolute gorgeous baby we can't forget either. All my piggies flying all about the place. But let me continue, because there are times when levity is called for. She even claims that you are also party to this. I would love to hear your take on this. It seems as if this particular YouTuber has totally taken leave of her senses. Well, I would be very, very sad to hear that anybody had taken leave of their senses. I'm going to make a point, actually, that is an important point to make, and would explain, hopefully, the innocent part of certain YouTubers coming up with what some people would regard as crazy theories and scenarios. If they don't have access, and very few people have access to accurate information, but they can see on a daily basis the evidence before their eyes that something isn't quite right and that things aren't quite what they seem to be, and that there are wheels spinning within wheels. They are going to try to make sense of the obviously insensible, and without access to actual knowledge, and really without having possessed not only the access, but without also, because a journalist has a little bit of access. Many members of staff have a little bit of information. But unless you are, I don't want to sound snobbish or grand, but the reality is, unless you are used to a certain sort of lifestyle and occupy through an accident of birth, usually, a certain sort of position, and have a certain sort of understanding of the nuances of what it means to be privileged. And of course, there are many degrees of privilege. The British royal family's degree of privilege is arguably one of the greatest degrees on earth. But well-bred people from old families with money, old money families, also are mini in that respect. As John Pringle used to say, he and people like him were mini princes in their own little kingdoms. And there is truth to that. Well, if you're not a mini prince, but you see that something that's very odd is going on, you can genuinely come to the wrong conclusion and get the wrong end of the stick. And you can come up with an explanation that to you makes sense, but it's actually inaccurate, because basically you are applying your codes of conduct and your values and your expectations to people who have totally different codes of conduct, totally different values, totally different considerations, and function in a different way on a different level. So I'm trying to be really understanding as to why decent, intelligent, people, ordinary people, often get the wrong end of the stick because they are dealing with people who are in extraordinary circumstances that they will never experience. They don't know the alienation, they don't know the isolation. They have different forms of alienation, different forms of isolation, different expectations, different values. So I want to qualify by making that point. And then I will say, Samantha has been complaining to me about the fact that some of the crazy things that are being said at the moment are just beyond ridiculous. That the Markle family is covering up for the fact that Meghan is much older than she is. Meghan is not much older than she is. Meghan is 42 years old. Is it 42? She was born in what, 1980? Or is she 43? Anyway, however old she is, she's not 47 or 59 or 72 or 31 or 54. She's none of those things. I think she was born in 1981, so I suppose that would make her 43. Yes, she's 43, because Harry's coming up for his 40th birthday, and she's 3 years older than he is effectively. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that Meghan is a planted by the CIA, or Meghan is planted by this or that, and Meghan is maybe Klaus Schwab's, who incidentally I have no time for, third cousin 5 times removed and is therefore his operative. I mean, absolute crazy stuff. But there are other things as well that I gather are being said. That I am an agent of the royal family. I can tell you something, I'm pretty damn sure the king wouldn't agree with that. He hasn't always liked the things I've had to say. Take it from me. Because I'm not systematically positive about anyone unless I genuinely, and be careful how I put this, unless I genuinely feel that they deserve me to be systematically positive. And I'll use 2 small examples. I think a lot of what the King and Prince William have to say on certain issues is belief as opposed to fact. And they have converted belief using priestly scientific priests is more accurate, to create articles of faith. And every time I hear it, I simply say, Green Sahara. And that just puts a spoke in the wheel. So I also do not agree with Prince William's stance on ivory. The royal family's ivory collection is one of the great ivory collections of all time. And why would anybody destroy it? Why would anybody not display it? I agree that much of the ivory trade is iniquitous and might have always been, but the fact of the matter is the past is the past, the present is the present. You can only learn from your errors if you make them, understand them, and learn from them. So let them come up with all of their rubbish. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Also, I gather from Samantha that people are also saying that the Markles are collusive with covering up the fact that Meghan had a teenage pregnancy. If they're covering it up, I certainly am not covering up anything, and my researches have led me to believe Meghan didn't have a teenage pregnancy and didn't give birth to a teenage baby. If it turns out I'm wrong, my researches have been deficient. But people can't have it both ways. They can't say that Meghan was, for physical reasons, incapable of having children, but she managed to pop one out. I mean, let's at least be reasonably consistent. So, and not be Meghannian and Heroldian about the whole thing. So, I hope that covers my sentiments on the whole matter. And really, if people want to come up with crazy theories, they're entitled to do so. I am not going to be acknowledging beyond what this question, and I'm certainly not looking at any of it. I'm afraid my time is too valuable to waste on looking at rubbish. And it's not entertaining either. So, I mean, if it was Schitt's Creek, I loved Schitt's Creek. So I look at comedies from time to time, and I look at edifying things, but am I going to look at Claptrap? I don't think so. And I gather that people have been banding my name around and saying rather vitriolic things about me, and that I don't know what I'm talking about. I know that's why I invented all the revelations I made about Diana, all inventions that just coincidentally Diana turned out to then fulfill them. After I'd made them, they were confirmed, but she actually had fulfilled them factually before I published the book. So you see the total insanity of the logic there. And Meghan and Harry, same thing. I mean, I won't even go into the other things that I have indisputably said that at the time everybody came down on my neck for, that then turned out to be accurate. So I have nothing to prove, and I'm certainly not going to be trying to prove it with flakes. Let them say what they will. I couldn't care less. And I think it's very sad if people are commentators, content creators, are doing this to make money, and they're being mischievous, and they're taking the view, well, we'll just make it up as we go along, and we'll entertain our followers with fantasy as opposed to fact. I think if they are deliberately misleading people, that's dishonorable. But if they are genuinely running down cul-de-sac, that's a different matter altogether. So let's put it that way. I hope that answers the question. HD Australia says, Dear Lady C, when did Princess Catherine realise that Meghan, I love it, was a wolf in sheep's clothing and her nemesis? Catherine appeared relaxed and very warm to Meghan at Wimbledon. Later on, Catherine always appeared tense when the wolf was in her proximity. Thank you for your videos. With love from Australia. Thank you for your nice comments. It's nice to be appreciated, and I'm glad you appreciate my videos. My understanding is that Catherine tried to give Meghan a chance, gave Meghan a chance, but her skin always crawled when she was around Meghan. You know, the animal in Catherine on an atavistic level spotted the danger that Meghan was and the danger that Meghan is. Well, that Wimbledon visit was created to obfuscate and to dampen the rumours that, which were in fact factual, that there was trouble in paradise and that the Fab Four were actually, more accurately, the hostile four. So of course Catherine was going to put her best foot forward and appear to be as relaxed as she could be, because that was the purpose of the enterprise. Thereafter, she hasn't needed to perform according to a script. She has performed according to her true feelings. She evidently has supreme disdain for Meghan. She regards, I am told, Meghan as, well, let's stick to the word disdain. She has supreme disdain for her. And I think we should leave it at that, because it says everything that needs to be said. Okay? Patricia Bandeko says, maybe Meghan thinks that if they can weasel back into the royal family, she would be able to swoop in on William if Catherine passes away. I wouldn't put it past her. She's just that crazy and ambitious. That is what some people think would be her dream scenario. But that's just what some people think. I need to be careful what I say in this regard, because let's remember, Meghan is a married woman. She's married to William's brother. It is obvious that if you see a Meghan in unguarded photographs from the past, that she has had a hankering after William. She would truly be absolutely insane if she thought that that would ever be the remotest of possibilities. But it's certainly making the rounds that people don't put it past her. Of course, how she'd actually managed to cope with Harry is something else again. But I'm not going to go there, because I've been hearing one or two scenarios as possible, and they are too distasteful to actually comment upon. So, Joan H. says, Meghan is making good use of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Confuse the enemy. Too bad she didn't read it before she exposed her true dark self for all to see. Meghan is a small-time operator in a big-time game. Meghan is the royal equivalent of one of those immigrants who used to play card games on Park and Lex and Madison Avenues. Oh, come on. No, put down your $5, da 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 da. She is confusing the enemy, but that was Diana's tactic as well. But Diana was far more sophisticated than Meghan. Meghan has at every turn not confused the enemy. That has been her aim. But in the act of setting out to confuse her enemy, she has informed her enemies of what she is about. You cannot, on a weekly basis, come out with 5 scenarios, none of which accord with the other, and you confuse the enemy. You show your enemy that you simply lack consistency, discipline, the powers of reason, and sufficient humility to actually acknowledge that not everybody is a fool and that you're not so clever that you can pull the wool over everybody's eyes and that they are going to be dumb enough to think what you want them to think. Good adversaries never underestimate the strength of their enemy. Meghan systematically underestimates not only the strengths of her enemy, but the mere fact that they are not all dunderheads like Harry, and indeed irrational like her. So I hope that addresses the issue. Vivian Howe says, Meg's and her American team think the royal family are Brits, and Brits are thickos just like has been. I think there's an element of truth to that. I also think, though, beyond that, they don't really care what the British think, because they are not really playing to a British gallery. They're playing to the penny section in the United States of America. And they are also playing worldwide to their ever-decreasing band of admirers. So they're playing to a very unsophisticated, gullible, uneducated, dumb, really, audience. And they also have underestimated not only the intelligence of the of their adversaries and their critics, but they have also underestimated the intellectual capacities of their target audience. And I'm not now referring to the dunderheads and the idiots in wherever they are who comprise their audience as followers. I'm referring to the audience, the target audience commercially, because their ever-increasing cack-handedness has not resulted in commercial success. It has resulted in ever-decreasing commercial failure. They would be well advised to have listened to Sunshine Sachs. Shut your mouth, take a break, give everybody else a break. just disappear for a while. But you see, you're dealing with addicts, and each of them is ultimately all addicted to fame and to attention, and they do not think with clear heads. They think the way addicts think, with befuddled brains, because all addicts have defective thinking. It goes along with the distortion that any addiction causes, unless, of course, you're addicted to truth and honor and integrity. But then you wouldn't be called an addict. You'd be called sensible. Marcia Dean Johns says, perhaps the royal family should stop taking the taxpayers' money. They've been on the dole for an awfully long time. Well, Marcia Dean Johns, I am afraid you are very ill-informed. The royal family does not take the British taxpayers' money. The royal family has, for some considerable length of time now, handed over the income from its properties to the state, and with the agreement of the state, takes back a percentage of the profits from its holdings. So, in fact, the royal family, via the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall, fund the royal operation to a large extent. And they're doing it not out of malice, and they're not doing it because they're leeches and cadging. They're doing it because they regard that as a fair and effective way of conducting the functioning of the monarchy. Let's put it that way. So I don't know where you get that they've been on the dole for an awfully long time. The state benefits from their possessions far more than they benefit from their own possessions. Look it up. You will discover to the contrary that they are anything but on the dole. They are actually giving the state money to which it is not entitled. So let's leave that at that. Helen E. Lee or Ellen Lee, I don't know, or Helene Lee, I don't know how it's pronounced or whether it's one name, initial and surname, says, Lady C, what are your thoughts on the recent marriage of a Norwegian princess and a Nigerian American shaman conman? Well, I know that his mother and sister have called him a conman, but I don't know enough to say whether I could or could not agree. So I am not going to use that description. He certainly calls himself a shaman. He certainly has bizarre ideas. It would have been, well, let me put it this way. There have been a series of marriages in the European and British royal families that in my generation would have been totally unthinkable. You have had men marrying single mothers who have then turned out to be wonderful crown princesses, although the son in question is causing some degree of embarrassment at the moment, and I am referring to Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway's son, who has evidently drug problems and is an embarrassment and a problem. So, and she's been a good wife to her husband, and they have lovely children, evidently. So that's one marriage that laid the ground for other, shall we say, erosions of expectation and of conventional desirability. Then there was Prince Carl Philip of Sweden, who married his Princess Sonja, as she's called, beautiful girl. She's made an impeccable princess, and she also had an interesting background. But both she and Mette-Marit have turned out to have been really almost ideal princesses. So it shows that something right has happened with both of them. Then, of course, because those two marriages were allowed to take place, there was then the Meghan and Harry's marriage. And the fact that other royals had allowed marriages with girls with rather more checkered pasts than would have been desirable in the past was also a reason to allow Harry to marry Meghan, with the expectation, it has to be said, that Meghan would perform the way Mette-Marit and Sophia have performed. Nobody envisaged that Meghan was, I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm a real team player as long as it's my team and all about me. But that's the bit she forgot to say. But she duped everybody. And I know as a fact that the late Queen genuinely thought that Meghan was going to assimilate and that Meghan was going to genuinely be a team player and that Meghan was genuinely going to be as good to her word and as good in her performance as those two princesses have been. Turns out something different has happened, doesn't it? So now we have the Norwegian case. Again, Norway. And remember, the Norwegian monarchy only started in, I think, 1905, when Norway severed itself from Sweden, and the Danish Prince Charles of Denmark became the crown prince, he became the king of Norway. He became the king of Norway, and his wife was Queen Maud, who was a British princess. She was George V's sister, and she was incidentally also dispatched the way George V was dispatched by Lord Dawson of Penn, who took it upon himself to dispatch her. But that's another story altogether. Well, my understanding is that the Norwegian royal family have had little choice in the matter. They have made the best of a bad deal, and their consolation is that their daughter and hopefully their son-in-law will be less overt and will be more honourable than Harry and Meghan have been. And if they aren't, there is already the consolation that Harry and Meghan have led the way, and Harry and Meghan will therefore somehow make any of their untoward activities seem less than they are, or at least not so bad. So, but isn't it interesting that both Meghan and this man are authoritarian figures who have set themselves up as gurus who can teach everybody how to lead their lives. I suppose one shambolic act after another. Let's move and shake, baby. I'm gonna show you how it's done. Long may it last. Will it? I gather in Norway people aren't taking bets. So on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Thank you so much. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, press the notification bell, and take good care. And as promised, I am going to share today and every other day for the next week or two the blurb about KidsOut, and also show you how, if you would wish to make a contribution, you can. I have been happy to make a contribution. It is a genuine charity. It has a charity number registered with the charity commissioners, and I think it's a wonderful cause. So God bless you. Bye-bye.